Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 222 and we have a good one for you today. As you can tell, it is not Friday, it is early Saturday. Between work and having a sick kid, I am very much exhausted and very tired and might be getting sick myself. But I'm not going to leave you without a video, even if it is a day late. Today's fish that we're going to be talking about is the grass carp. Now, the grass carp, or scientific name Stenofaringodon idella. Again, that's Stenofaringodon idella. It is part of the family Cyprinidae, which is the family of carp and minnows. And we've talked about carp before, and minnows before quite often. But I'm surprised that we have never talked about this. This fish is actually very, very interesting. In fact, it's so interesting, it's the only species of its genus, which, as I've told you many times before, that usually means a fish is very, very unique, and this fish is no exception. Now, this fish is native to eastern Russia from the Amur River of eastern Asia, to the Amur River of eastern Russia and China, and then south to the West River of southern China. So it's found in that area. It's pretty easy to picture on a map. Essentially, eastern Russia to southern China. That's where it's natively found. And I say natively because this fish has been introduced to many countries around the world. You've probably heard of grass carp. I would not be surprised. Many countries have grass carp in them now. Japan, Mexico, Sweden, Germany, Switzerland, Romania, Iran, US, India. That's just naming a few, and that's just naming a few in the northern hemisphere. Argentina, Venezuela, Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and South Africa all have grass carp populations in the southern hemisphere. So, very, very widespread fish, been introduced all over the world, and can cause an issue. But we'll get into that in a bit. Essentially inhabits any body of water as long as it can find slow flowing or standing water bodies with plenty of vegetation. That is how it survives. When it's in its reproductive cycle, it actually needs some heavily flowing waters. And that's because their eggs actually sink pretty heavily. They're not very buoyant, so they depend on a flow to carry their eggs downstream and keep their eggs afloat and oxygenated. Because if they go to the ground in those very slow moving bodies of water, they'll actually, suffocate and die. The eggs will. Now, it is a large fish. Max length is around 2 meters, which is around 6.6 feet. Max weight is around 100 pounds, which is about 45 kilograms. And you can see right here, this is a very good sized one. Now, on average, you're going to find them averaging around 0.6 to 1 meters, which is about 24 to about 40 inches, which is still a decently sized fish. It's nothing to shake a stick at. Probably averages around, 60 pounds or so. Definitely not a small fish and something you just shake a stick at and say, small. I don't know why I said that twice. I'm a little loopy. I'm very, very tired. Now, as you can see here, it has this elongated torpedo-shaped body. No barbels, which is kind of neat and unique and along the carp world. Usually they at least have one set of barbels. Broad teeth, which I know you can't see, Anal fin is set fairly close to the caudal fin. Eyes are set pretty low on the head. This kind of sloping forehead. It's got this slightly oblique mouth. The lips look fleshy, but they're actually not really fleshy. At least the bottom lip isn't. It's kind of your generic carp. One interesting thing about it, though, it does not have an elongated dorsal fin, which, helps out with identification, things like that. In terms of coloration, sorry, drinking my coffee. It usually has this kind of like a dark olive color on the top, shading to a brownish yellow to a white belly. Pretty kind of bland. Got the very large scales with the herringbone pattern, meaning they're outlined. Other than that, it's kind of a bland fish. And it's actually a very short-lived species. 5 to 9 years is kind of what you expect on this. And I think only a couple of individuals have been documented passing 11, except for one population, I believe in Washington, the state. There was a population that a lot of those fish are actually exceeding 15 years. Which is really weird. Just really, really weird. Couldn't tell you why on that one. Now, we read all the countries that it was introduced in, and it was spread across the world for 2 separate reasons. Now, one of those reasons is food. It's one of the most common freshwater farm fish in China, and known as one of the big magnificent 4, I think is what they call them, which are the top 4 species in China for aquaculture for food. So, very important food fish. Sorry. And, very, very important for food. But that's not the primary reason it's really kind of extended its range as far as it has. They're actually very heavily stocked to this day around the world for weed control, aquatic plant control. And the reason for that is grass carp are one of the few fish that actively eat higher levels of vegetation. Now, they do eat detritus and, stuff on the detritus at the bottom, but these fish are exceptionally well known for going after like actual vegetation. And it's even a hindgut fermenter, which, in case you didn't know, cows would be considered a foregut fermenter, whereas things like horses and rabbits are hindgut fermenters, where they're still storing some of the plant material, but it's after the colon, and so it allows them to absorb a little bit more energy from the plants, because plants are not exactly very energy high. Because of that, that's why they have to actually eat as much as they do. In fact, the grass carp eats up to 3 times their body weight daily in vegetation, in weeds, which, as you can imagine, is pretty effective as long as they're eating the right things and as long as they don't escape, which that's been the issue. Is there have been multiple escapes, and they have caused issues by eating other vegetation that they were not wanting to eat. But 3 times their body weight daily is a very large amount of plants, let me tell you. And now, for the interesting fact we're getting the video on, it was kind of a thought question posed to me by my advisor, and I may have told this story a while ago. But my professor asked me a question, which his professor asked him, actually. So a little generational thing. It was, we knew that the grass carp was hindgut fermenter, but why isn't it or any other fish a foregut fermenter like cattle? There's plenty of vegetation and water for it to go around. Even with grass carp, there's still plenty of aquatic vegetation that fish could be eating on, and they nibble on them, but they don't eat on them. And foregut fermenting is by far the most efficient method to break down plants and gather nutrition from plants. And I didn't have a clue. I was like, well, nothing really makes sense for me. And he told me, well, I'm going to tell you the reasoning that me and my professor came up with. There are no foregut fermenters of fish because one of the main byproducts of foregut fermentation is methane gas, which is always a hot button topic. And I'm not talking about global warming. It's just a known fact that foregut fermenters produce a lot of methane. And methane is an incredibly light gas. And so the balance was there are no foregut fermenters in fish because methane would increase the buoyancy of the fish so much that any extra energy they got from being a foregut fermenter, they would lose trying to keep themselves in the water column, because methane is such a light gas they'd shoot up to the top. And I'm like, huh. And that's one of those things that I have talked about numerous times on the channel, and why I'm telling you this and why I still think it's an interesting fact is, I have often encouraged you as my viewers, think about things. Think about why. Think about why not. This is kind of the other side of the question. Think about why not. Why isn't there foregut fermenters? Why aren't there any more like placoderms, which are the heavily armored fish of the long time ago periods, dinosaur times, that are basically, yeah, my wife just laughed at me. Mrs. Ping was like, you're very intelligent. Dinosaur times there. She's mean to me. I'm just kidding. She's a loving wife. But why aren't there any of those fish that have those like exoskeletons? Like we have the Arapaima and the gar and stuff like that that are basically armored, but not like it was back then, and obviously a heavy exoskeleton would be very difficult to keep off the ground of the water. So, it's one of those things that I'm just encouraging you. Don't just think about why things are the way they are, why they are the way they are. Think about why they are not the way they are not. I hope that made sense, because I must be loopy. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. If you'd like to support the channel, please click the link down below. It is by no means expected, but very much appreciated. Regardless, take care of yourselves. Take care of your loved ones, and peace.